if I had a nickel for every time I was like, yeah, that's not entirely true, I would probably have a lot of nickels. And what I mean by that is, you know, you get a lot there's sometimes offline communications and information gets funneled. You know, as a project manager, you can set the expectation, you can set those lines of communication, but for whatever reason, ultimately at some point in your career, you will deal with some type of rogue team member, whether it's an internal characteristic of the team member, or it's potentially they're just following their marching orders, right? Their boss or their leadership team wants to hear what's going on from them. Um, you know, and sometimes information wires get crossed and misinformation gets up. But I can talk to you. You know, when I went through a merger while I was with Shire, you couldn't bring two different organizations together when Shire actually acquired Baxalta. You know, the cultures of the organizations were extremely different. So Shire was a smaller, I would call maybe a mid-sized company with about 6,000 people that was used to being very entrepreneurial, sitting together in a room and thinking more like a small company, just getting, you know, sitting in that room, getting things done. And I kind of say it, you know, that they would ask for forgiveness rather permission, right? We get in a room, do what we needed to do, and then translate it up and say, this is what we did and it worked or it didn't work, right? Baxalta was the complete opposite. I mean, they had a big company culture where, you know, everything needed to be funneled up before anything moved. So when those two worlds came together, you know, communication was something that really derailed me, not so much from a project standpoint, but it was more from just a supply standpoint. So I managed, you know, $4 billion in revenue. So a lot of people were interested in what was going through my sites. And unfortunately, a lot of times, the information, you know, people just wanted to send information up to these executives quickly and not really verify that it was accurate. So what I wound up needing to do is reestablishing those lines of communication all the way up to the executive team, and I set a what I called a four blocker. So I would basically take for every single product I had, which was nine different products going through this site. I had a four blocker, which kind of took status, you know, inventory positions, what our challenges were, what our delays were, what our production was, what our metrics were on time in full, you know, quality metrics, all those types of things, and I would update those on a on a semi-regularly basis. It started off as bi-weekly but moved to monthly. But you know, it goes back to managing expectations, setting those lines of communication, knowing that this is the single source of truth. If it doesn't come from this particular person, it's a draft, right? This is not the information. It needs to come up through, you know, the respective site lead, and and it'll come by this day. If it's earlier, it may not contain the most up to date or accurate information. So communication is extremely key. I mean, PMI denotes 90% of your time as a project manager is dealt with communication. I think that's probably about right. If you're doing any less than that, I think you can wind up facing a lot of derailments on a lot of your projects.